afternoon, everybody. We have some very important news to hear from. I've just got a couple of slides very quickly to go through. So next slide, Wayne. Thank you. So just really a reminder that we're in the process really. So we have obviously a few workshops now. We have taken papers to community boards. And really, we see that circle now is really, so the crucial thing today is to hear from our community board chairs or their delegates. And also the second part of this workshop is to start really thinking about the comms. Next slide, one. Okay, so in terms of our community board members, we have had some sort of informal opportunities for them to firstly hear about the proposal. So we have had some workshops, and today's workshop is for them really it's initial thoughts, it's questions, but it's not necessarily the community board's position. So what we have encouraged community boards to do, if they so choose, is to put their community board's thoughts down in writing to us by the 8th of July. If they get it to us by the 8th of July, there will be an opportunity for us to actually analyse their feedback and incorporate their thinking into the paper you will receive on the 30th of July. Noting that's a bit of a pressure, particularly for one community board that's got some members overseas. As long as we get that feedback by the 19th of July, it will get attached to the paper. We're just putting time to give it due consideration and the thinking. So that's really where we're at today. To say the really crucial part is to hear from our community board chairs and delegates. So I'm going to hand over to the Mayor and Peter to lead just part of the workshop.
Thank you. Do you have anything to add? No, exactly. It'll be everything that Saskia just said, but it is a chance for us to hear what you had to say, so we can start working that through into the paper that we come to develop, but it'll be informed by symptoms or the other advice we get from the community boards. Who's going to go first? So you're second.
Obviously, the community board hasn't had an opportunity to meet since last week to start thinking about what they want to say in response to that was presented at last week's meeting, and there was a workshop prior to that when we had our submissions hearing. What I would say is that in terms of the sorts of things that have been talked about and the way that the direction seems to be going for community boards is that that there has to be some sort of effort made to make sure this is really a true partnership. That we know that for some boards, my board, at the last election, there weren't enough people standing to take those positions, and obviously once we got to a by-election situation, there were lots of people who wanted to be involved, and you know that we know that local government can be fickle in terms of engagement and people wanting to put their hands up to be a part of it. But I really feel that in order for us to make sure that we're still getting really good quality people popping their hands up and saying, I want to be part of this, I can see that this is still a way to make a difference for my community. It's still a way to have a voice for my community, and it's still a way to advocate for development within my community is crucial to us being able to move forward and continue to have a really strong local voice for each of our communities via any community boards. I feel like this is, you know, we've talked about districtisation in terms of there's definitely winners and losers in terms of different things. There's swings and roundabouts where districtising swimming pools is probably a win for Cromwell because our pool, if that's districtised, would cost us less money. The same for halls. If the ongoing operational costs of those become districtised, that's probably those are probably things that that in terms of rates, bills, and ongoing costs to our community would be spread more evenly. But inevitably, there are things that the community will perceive that it's losing, and things like that will be losing control over decision making. and there'll be things that the community perceives that it's that are risks to it, and certainly, as we know, the common community has already expressed those at length when we had the initial delegations discussion, which I know we're coming back to, the concerns about the use, the proceeds of land sales and asset sales within the Cromwell ward, and how that money would be allocated, particularly when it comes to the to endowment land and how that's managed across the district. So that's really some initial thinking. I'm interested to hear what others around the table have to say, having, you know, I think that Cromwell, the Cromwell community will need this to be really carefully brought to them in terms of understanding what this is all, what the purpose of this is, what's going to be the benefits and the risks, and what the outcome actually means for that local voice.
Thank you.
I've just got a quick question for Anna on that. In terms of communicating that with the community, do you think that the comms plan should be for council to drive those comms, or for that to come from the board?
Well, I think it needs to be both, because I think that you've got to be, because when we're talking district, we are talking council. So we are talking about the council taking over some functions of the board. I think you need to ensure then that what comes to the board makes sure that every member sitting around the table has got really clear understandings of what the purpose of these discussions are, what the outcomes of them are going to be, what the potential around the table, what the changes are going to look like for our board, because without that, they're not going to communicate it in a way that's going to be helpful. And you're also in a situation where, I mean, I can't predict what every member of the board is going to say the next time they meet, or when we sit down to have these discussions, and to put together something in terms of our submission. You know, the board taking control of the comms will depend on the board's position about what they think of the proposal. So if I end up with a board who's very oppositional to it, and that's what gets presented in your submission, then you probably don't want them doing your comms.
Well, we want to make sure that Cromwell's feeling heard by the board that's been elected to represent them.
Yeah.
And that's I guess a two-way street to an extent.
Absolutely,
Yes, we
yes,
want to
that's the
avoid
way
any of those kind of Chinese whispers and rumour mills and random tangents and
But that's where clear communication is really necessary, and that it starts at council level.
Student talking on behalf of BCB. Jane?
on behalf of BCB. Yeah.
It's a bit odd.
No, it's not. It's great.
At the table. But I think, yeah, really the big two things that came up from our meeting was around the endowment land. So thanks, Wayne, for getting that information out. And also just ensuring that the community is brought along on this journey, and so we're not having that misinformation or lack of information in this process, because as somebody who had concerns last time around the delegation conversation, this feels a lot better. You know, it feels like we are being included and we've got a voice in this process. I think big one for me would be around what is the purpose of community boards moving forward, what do they look like, is really important. It's very hard for community board members to come out and say, you know, we're against something when I kind of need to know what that structure looks like. And I think it's important that great we're involved now, but that we're still involved in this process as it tracks along into the future.
Do we know what that future is ourselves?
This is what we're working out.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, like, we don't know whether we're going to be a unitary.
We've just got to work in.
We're going to work what we're working with.
Yeah.
But I mean, we could be a part of Oamaru or Waitaki or Queensland, that's Gore. We don't.
And this is one of the, to jump in, if there is amalgamations, then I believe those amalgamations would enhance community boards, because geographically we could become bigger, or we could become part of another, in which case the community boards, it's one of the many very good reasons to keep the community board strong, is that if there are amalgamations, it's bigger, that we've got that voice right down to the grassroots.
Crucial. Yeah, and I think that I think the districtisation has to happen for the size what we are, and we went through it with road and we've done it with water and waste. But it was interesting, though, after the Minitoto discussion about the name of the Minitoto, it really brought the whole community, whichever way, tied it together. And so we had a say at this table through the committee. And Mike Dowling, who's our ex-councillor, community board chairman, said the community board is where the people have their say. And I don't think that'll ever go away. And we made it pretty clear with the chairman speak or not, and I don't think they should have to, because they actually had meetings in the community board where that information is all gathered and they come back and it's pretty open table. I don't think community boards disappear, but from a bigger picture, sometimes a bigger picture can make better decisions. Well, not decisions as such, but sees it for a different point.
Okay, so there's general consensus around the VCB that this needs to be discussed. Like it's not 1989 anymore. We have to have this conversation. So much been districtised already. Look at the decision you guys had to make today. We've got to have it, but it's just ensuring that community boards don't lose that voice in the process. Because right now, I think everyone's saying all of you have at some point sat on a community board. We're moving forward. That's going to change when you reduce it to one councillor. And we want to ensure that moving 2-3 elections down the track, that the person isn't lost with whoever's sitting around this table. Because not everyone's going to have that opportunity.
I'd like to, back that thinking up, because this conversation is also being had in, with that happening in the background as well. So that representation review and the changes to the makeup of the boards happening at the same time as you're talking about districtising services, so that there's the two things that are happening to boards at the same time within that. So yes, around this table, there's a lot of people who are either currently on boards or have been, their pathway to council has been via community boards. So that changes quite considerably
Good point.
in the next.
Conscious we haven't heard from Norm, we're going into do a general discussion, we haven't heard from you, Norm.
A lot of what I guess I'm hoping that my colleagues are thinking, because I haven't had the chance to talk to them through all day since our meeting. And you'll, to those that of you that followed our meeting, will see that the discussion around districtisation at our board meeting between myself, Jill and Russell was very limited. And herein lies our problem. In the Tibet Valley, we are, I guess, bereft of time in terms of taking or having the ability to make considered decisions and input to really, really important issues. And for me, it begs the question as to why we're trying to do this in an environment where we're struggling to do our job with the rates and keep the rates at a manageable level. And I do take my hat off to you guys and the staff for work that you've been putting into managing the race issue. But, it's just, I think there's just too much going on. And decisions have to be made, but the timeliness of it has to reflect the I guess, if you're making business decisions in your own business, you don't try and change everything all at once. And address it all at once. You take it in manageable chunks. But when you look around the wards and you have, and I don't mind calling our board probably the weak link in the chain. We've got so much going on in our own little environment, with the challenges that are put on us by one particular member, that we can't take good decisions. And I just.
Can I challenge that? Because I think when Sally and Stephen Jeffrey came here, you were extremely well represented at this table. Can I have a discussion with you?
Sorry, I didn't mean.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess, in a digitized form, you can still have your disagreements within the community board level or what you're dealing with, but actually most of it gets through to the table. I guess, do you think that'll change?
I'm hoping it will. There's only so much, I guess, we're operating with half a team. And that is my problem.
I think, just to take that norm for is this the right time? There's no good time. We'll have the LTP next year, so that's a bad time. And the year after that, we'll have a challenging annual plan, that's a bad time. But we've also got to be really cognizant of a couple of the drivers for this. And one is the Cromwell Town Hall and what can be seen as a disparity in Cromwell paying the running costs of it. When Cromwell's already paying an awful lot, if we look at the road in particular, you know, the disparity in that. And we've got the long-term plan next year, whether that, you know, with the long-term plan, if we don't do it now, then we wait another, in that case it'll be 2 years, but there never really is a good time. I was going to just also mention to just had welcome people who are watching online in the workshop. This is new to us, and it's good to have people streaming in.
I mean, we're sitting here, the Teviot Valley is facing in the order of 33% rate rise. Districtisation as it's being proposed is going to add to that. As a ratepayer, but with my personal hat on, I struggle with that. You know, sort of with as the leader of the community board, I find the challenge of selling a 33% rate rise enough, let alone taking further autonomy away from my board and the community.
Yes.
I suppose the flip side of that, Norm, is that and in the case of the TV and Manitoba in particular, if you took out and said we hadn't districtised previously water, roading, these increases are probably just going to put it back to the way it would have otherwise been. That's not necessarily a reason for doing it, but in terms of understanding the benefits for the greater good, there's always going to be some communities that will be impacted upon it. And I can recall pretty well the Three Waters debate when we districtised it and that impact that it had. And I just said publicly that the bad behaviour of the previous Vincent County by not taking the sewage scheme was going to actually cost us whole district a lot of money. And it did, but wasn't the right thing to do in terms of equity and wisdom? The answer has to be yes. So while it will be a really bitter pill to swallow, someone that just said that my rates went up 41% in the last 2 years, that, you know, that's the way to make it as fair as you can. Doesn't make it, you're hard to sell, I get it, but that's the reality of the end result you could achieve by doing it. And I say could, and we're going to work that through to make sure that is saying, is that what our communities deserve? Is that the way it should be? And again, this group of people here are the ones to be faced with making a hard decision about that.
I don't disagree with you with that. It's just, like I said, the resources that are available here. I'm struggling to support you guys, which we are.
I've been on to both Tim and Peter. I think if we do the districtisation, we do it in a staged approach because it's not a race. And the reason for that is the Cromwell Hall, because it gives Cromwell a chance to pay it off. Because I have no issue with the sport. So I think, and after being about Booth in the weekend, the facility they have down there is world class. So if we want to be a world class destination, we've got to have world class facilities.
Then you think that districtisation is the only way to achieve that?
Well, I just think the biggest benefit for the Minnetonka is to have a thriving Cromwell, a thriving shopping centres, thriving auditorium where you can listen to bands or do whatever you want to do or watch art or do the stuff other people in our community want to do. So our real benefit is supporting districtisation and Agnew, I think it is anyway. And it has worked if we go to Naismith Hill and the quality of the water there is the same as in Cromwell. The Shortsmith Subject Road in our bridges, it's subsidised by the increase in rate part. But that's what makes central work. That's what's made the growth. And Tim's been there's been 5,000 people, correct me if I'm wrong, or the rest. And the rest is
7,500, 6,500.
So as a result of probably districtising the roads and the water and trails that go through our region, the tides come in, all the boats have lifted. That's the only benefit we'll really get out of districtisation, that is making sure that when the business meeting will start from there, they're done naturally. As soon as rail trucks stop, those cafes and that are now screaming out for something else, beautify our town, beautification of the town. Into the short-term plans, I think we're all in it together. And you and I, we really have benefited from the roading and the water, and it'll continue to be so. And the trade-off, I'm not saying that our people will be really happy having to fund the 600,000 it cost them to run the pool. Well, why are we doing that? Actually, the benefit to them is in there.
It was interesting, Stuart, the drop-in session, before you got there, it quickly got onto districtisation because somebody asked how much of this in Renfrew and how much are we paying for the hall. I said, we're paying nothing now, but, and I said $280 per Cromwell ratepayer for the hall once it's up and running for what is effectively the Central Otago Event Centre, because sure as hell I'm not building another one.
Yeah.
I wouldn't expect to. And quite rightly, the people in Renfrew went, well, why the hell should I be contributing to that? And I showed them the slide of what roading means, which would be another $2,000 a year on every ratepayer and Maniatoto if roading wasn't districtised. And to a person, they went, never thought about that. Fair enough, I get it. So but that doesn't help when you've got to sell at increase in cost if the situation continues in the Cheviot. But it was, okay, it's a survey of 8 people, but they just went, never thought about it. Okay. And that's why I'm always saying this is about continuing districtisation if we do it, because we can't forget what's come before. And what did Cheviot's rates drop when water was districtised? Roxburgh was.
So it's hard to say.
It's hard back then.
10 years ago, when you got that really
But
good deal.
you would still have that on your rates now if you didn't. And for fairness, it's a very, 714 in Roxburgh dollars a year. And fairness is an extremely, there's no more subjective word than fairness.
And it was more than what it dropped by, it was more than what it was otherwise going to go to.
Yeah.
That was one thing, that was neither here and now, but it's actually what it was going to end up at.
Doesn't make it any easier, and it's the same as us today explaining why the rate's been up 18.3%, doesn't make it any easier when the bill comes in.
Yeah, and I wonder if the conversation about everything happening all at once, Steve talking about staging districtisation and then
My debate after the.
Yeah, want to let Anna finish, yeah.
Sorry, about the
So that's
time.
This is
Yeah,
school
so
teachers.
that's one aspect of that. And you talked about the long-term plan and the annual plan. Well, they're always going to be there, but I think some of that alludes to the fact that while we're having conversations about this, for community boards thinking about what does it look like for them, you're also having conversations about, well, there's also changes coming to the makeup of boards, and then we're going to be talking about delegations. So those are some of the all at once things that are happening. Yeah.
Couple of things in that. One is simply we're running 5 sets of books instead of one.
Yeah.
So it will still be 5 sets of books instead of one if we do it slowly. But the second thing is, how do you decide? We've got 18% of our spending is still with the boards. How do you decide what stays in and what goes out? Because guess what? If you decide pools stay in, everything goes wonky. If you decide halls are in and nothing else is, everything goes wonky. And as soon as you start that subjective debate, you're going to wind up with Maniatoto saying, no, bloody hall's got to be in, but not the Cromwell one. It becomes really hard, and you wind up almost in a.
And I think
Some of that's
feedback from them. It was just about, I think I think that in terms of the level playing field across the district and ensuring that everybody's paying the same for the services that the district gets is great. I think that some of the conversation for boards, however, is about, so what does that look like when you come to sit around your table? If everything's now being handled by this table, what is the purpose? What's the local community actually going to be talking about at their meetings? Where's our purpose?
Cheryl.
Having been to the community board conference, to be fair, our community boards have had an awful lot more to do than other community boards around New Zealand. They have a lot more responsibility and a lot more say. Those community boards were still achieving great things, but not on a perhaps scale of buildings. And they were more they were in a way more community sort of focused, ground level community focused. And at the time I remember being quite embarrassed and not really saying a great deal because we were dealing with big things, and they were dealing with creating a new, extending the bike path or creating a playground, or there's a lot, but a lot of what they were doing is, to a lesser degree, but it was still very, very much community orientated. And so I don't think you're not gonna, the community boards don't think it's gonna lose their community focus. It'll just be at a different level, just a different dollar level, if you like. I think.
Well, the Minnetonka Community Board's really got no delegation other than setting fees. But we haven't got any land other than the hospital ones. They
Those other, the community boards from the other countries, they don't.
don't have much at all.
They don't have that.
But I think you raised, there's a couple of really good examples of how Waioi as mayor absolutely firmly believe that the community boards are crucial, and they're both in Kiwiat and Maniototo. And you already raised, Stu, the debate about the Maniototo spelling, I thought was fantastic, because we really got it up through the board. The board spoke at this table, and almost everybody listened. I'm sure say, but you know what I mean? That is how I see it working, is that how would we would have you telling us what the Maniototo thought. Instead of that, we had 5 people telling us what the Maniototo thought. There was a divergence of views there, and it was really, really good. And I had the same one with King George Park with the maple trees. God, what an absolute show that was down in Roxburgh last election. But the board ran the discussion, didn't waste of time people coming from anywhere else to do it. The board ran the discussion, ran it really well, came to council and said, well, actually, no, you had the delegation because it was in your hands. But in this instance, you would come to the council, and I cannot conceive a moment where the council is not going to hear what the board has from a process like that and go, cool, thank you, now we know what the community wants. And that's, you know, the dollars and cents on one side in terms of that one.
And another one is probably your trees.
Well, again, yeah.
Because it became really, really clear from some of us in the council, you might say, that there was real trouble getting the tree thing right. And so anytime we used the council vote where it's been 50-50, but the council, you know, dug its toes, some of the councillors dug its toes and started helping, there's around about giving direction for the community board. And the outcome of that, got tricky for the Vincent Community Board. But actually, the result now, I'd say, has been a really, really good result now.
It's a good result now.
So, but I mean, so as a council, we sort of argue, we make granddad of it and say, what's over that you guys can have your debate and look at the debate. And then when the debate comes to really pushing, we made a decision.
But also in that half mile one, it was an extremely divided community.
Yeah.
So the board was 4-3, the
Yeah.
council was 6-6. You know, it actually reflected very well where the community
All
was
the
at.
community lifted and had its say.
But the interesting thing too with that is when you look at the repatriation of that area of land under districtisation, the whole district would be paying for it. So if the next one happens in one of our little places, if the Wild and Pine Group goes, hey, guess what? Grovers Hill or whatever is your next big area, it's not going to fall on a small rating base to fix that problem, because it'll be, as time goes on, we'll work our way through the Walden situation. As one example, and the repatriation we paid for by everything, which
There's a lot of ways that's way it should, because there's one region. One region's got broom and trees, and one region's got rabbits and bits and pieces. So I don't see.
To bring the community boards together then, because I mean, you do hear, oh, well, I don't know, but we hear in Cromwell. You know, there's a gorge between them. You know, if you're going to go down
Cricket
this
teams and rugby teams and railways.
districtisation, you're going to have to bridge that division between.
Well, I can speak to anyone from Maniototo.
I'm not the boards, but the community.
Yeah.
You have to get that across to the community. The community.
Yeah. And I think if we look at the half mile as a great example, is your louder part of the community is an Aussie majority. Very little at the time is that most of the time.
okay.
And I think, you know, there is that conversation to be had that if we are being responsible for districtisation, and there are those divides within our communities, we are a small population as a district, we will be having those big divides. Even though we all live in one area, we should all be wanting what's best for the entire area.
So I think it goes back to, there has to be real genuine partnership between what's happening in community boards and what's happening around the council table. We're going to have less councillors coming to board meetings, ensuring that that is the case is probably a challenge. Those conversations.
Just picking up what Jacob said about, you know, being together and being one, the reality is that we are also required to recognise those communities of interest. And the reality is the community of interest in Cromwell and the interest in Cromwell aren't necessarily the same as they are in the TVET or Alexandra or anywhere else in that. So you've got that tension as well. You know, yeah, it's not about them and us, it's about that's, you know, the interests in the community are not the same as elsewhere. It'll be commonalities, so you'll see, take advantage of them.
Grandparents in the Manitoto who have got a very different opinion than the ones implied, so it's like that all over the place. But I think there is a way that we can come together on this conversation. You know, this is what's best for the community as a whole.
And through that gives you the strength of the community.
Exactly.
Well, it's our job to sit here to take, we signed a declaration to be fair and equitable for the whole community.
That's for the whole district, and
The
that's.
whole district, whole district, and that's something I stick by. Well, these things I've really seen off that
Christmas
declaration.
present, that we all come together at Christmas lunch.
There you go.
The problem is
And we pay. You haven't said anything today, Stu, come on, what page is it? Waiting for a stewism.
So, do you agree that there's, I guess, a conflict between what we're trying to achieve and what the message that we're putting out? If we're sitting here saying, hey, your rates are going to go up 33% plus a little bit more if we go down to districtisation, but it's going to be good for you.
The rates at this stage are only increasing in the TVET, which is
Sorry.
the rates at this stage, the projections are only increasing in the TVET under districtisation. But outside of that, there's two things that I've heard from a lot of people in the three. But one is lack of transparency, and a lot of that is about, I get my rates wrong, I don't understand it. And a lot of that is the complexity of reward-based rates. And the other thing is you need to find ways to do things better. And there's efficiencies to be gained. As I said, instead of running 5, 6 books, you're running one. But it is hard to communicate when you've been, for me, like sitting around here 7.5 years, I'm seeing the massive benefits that will be here. We have to be extremely aware that the boards need to still have a purpose, and they do have a purpose, but we've got to make sure that that purpose is encouraged and enhanced. But yeah, the sitting still and doing things because that's the way we've always done them is an inherent risk as well. And one of the things I noticed in the drop-in sessions was, and they strangely all wound up with districtisation just about from some people anyway. And the people that moved to the district in the last 10 years ago, I don't even understand what the hell they're on now. We're all one district, aren't we?
Yeah.
Which is quite interesting, you know, the attitude of hey, it's Cromwell and it's Alps and the rest of it is, there's still a few guys that play rugby with and Clyde, very Alexandra South Clyde, but it is more of a thing that is perhaps a bit more traditional than.
It's more of a locals thing than a community thing. And a lot of those people who are dropping in Naseby had come from Nelson and couldn't believe the community. And they didn't even contemplate why it was a district-wide thing.
Yeah.
So this is probably the old, you know, people in Killy's age, probably more than anything, or my mother and father's age, but yeah, really is a community. When I was like, sorry.
Yeah.
I missed that in some.
The district vision project, and this will come back to council and the community boards. So when you look at the growth of the region, out of the 400, 500 people that the survey extensively, probably 75, 80% of them have only been here since the new millennium. And so that's the growing face of all our community is people like me coming in.
Yeah.
And so it's these new migrants from around New Zealand, from around the world that are coming and skilled across.
A lot of you, there's a lot to say too. Sanctuary these days.
I think it's important that when we go down this, when you're designing this document and how this is going to look, and especially to reiterate what Norma's point is that it needs to be, whatever comes out needs to be really clear how that's going to look from an individual, because it's, to be honest, nobody in the community really cares, provided they can do all the things that they can do on a regular day-to-day basis. What they want to know is how that's going to hit them in the pocket, because they say that's your job sitting around this table for all of us, community boards and council. That's our job to do that. However, what they want to know is what it's going to cost them at the end of the day. And maybe that's a today question, but we also need to look at how that looks in a 5-year, 10-year, 20, whatever it is, someone who's clever at the math side does that side of it.
Long-term plans, too.
And how does that look for a community member? Because, you know, I mean, obviously we did hear from the Teviot quite strongly, and looking at the initial numbers, the
Yeah,
Teviot does look like it's, you know, there is gains, but it is, that's how people will be vocal because of a certain thing, and it will be their back pocket.
I think that probably people will be vocal when they're thinking about development of land that is set for development at the moment and the use of the proceeds of the development of that land. So you're looking at the industrial land on Bendigo Road and the Gear Estate, and what happens to the proceeds of the development of that land will be the short-term stuff that Cromwell goes, well, what's happening with that? And how's that being used? Because we might win in our back pockets for a little bit, but if we've lost that, then we lose in the long term.
Okay, so I'm hearing some really good views, and a lot of them are around the public's concern, and that comes down to the messaging, and perhaps it's a good opportunity to talk about communications and how we may progress with that as well. We could sit here for a lot longer, and we can. I've got to pop out about maybe 3:15, so I'm just going to get through a lot of stuff before I go. But did you have some comms discussions for us to move to?
Yes, I've got a few slides here, just to sort of talk about how we're going to start shaping up. So thank you for your feedback already, those of you for slide one. Okay, so really starting out, obviously we need to build up our narrative, and thank you for saying that feedback already. So at a very high level, it's to investigate this rule-based funding and decision making for those remaining big activities here. So at this stage, staff are thinking, pending council approval on the 31st of July, that essentially we will be asking our community either whether they want to do it or not. We're thinking quite simple, not to overcomplicate the particular consultation question. Any sort of feedback on that approach at that stage? That's what staff sort of thought. There was really only one or the other.
Well, I think the third one that isn't there that I'm not advocating at all is a piecemeal approach or a staged approach. I mean, you could say, ward funded pools, but not parks and property, or ward funded, and I just think we're going to confuse the public, and we're going to have an absolute scrap between ourselves about what stays in and what's out. So it's pool to get off the potty.
Just to take that through, picking up what Norm's saying for the TV in particular, where there's going to be one particular community that's going to have the biggest impact on, then I'll warrant looking closer at how you might, what's the word I want to use?
Something like.
Yeah.
So you would make pools out of it on the basis that Teviot doesn't have a pool funded by.
Yeah, and then there's like, they'll probably say that, I know, but you've got to think about, you're going to marginalise one particular part of your community, which is already marginalising itself. What Norm just told us.
Well, it also has had the heaviest rates of increase from a lot.
Yeah, and then they've also got their own hall too. Have they? Yes. I just like, yeah, no, but
Plus community.
yeah.
Well,
Yes,
yes.
yeah, so they've got a community pool and a community hall that rates don't really
Help.
help.
I would
the
suspect,
entertainment centres, councillor.
Is it?
And
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, but the community's raised a lot of funds to make things happen in there, and the council don't.
Yeah,
Okay.
and they've got a group there.
Yeah.
Like, so.
So that makes
it
it
would
just one thing.
be easier for us to stay with the status quo than to have cherry pick things in and out, because
Yeah,
you'll create the same work for the organisation. And inefficiencies will remain. It's easier if it's the status quo, we remain rule-based, it's simple. We understand that, we know what it is. The alternative is district-wide. A third option of what is it, it would be complicated.
And just to add what Peter said, is one of the drivers for us is really working our financial strategy as well. And both of our big pools are carrying a significant deficit. So part of the conversation we're going to have with you in LGP is how do we over time get our pools out of these big deficits? What does that funding look like? So to exclude that takes it again back down to the ward level and a small ratepayer base to deal with those requisites in the farmer and other spots.
But
In real.
got to take into account that though, that be equitable as well. That is an important part of it. If it's harder for us, that's fine. It's harder for us, but it's about the equity.
One could argue over time that it is more equitable because of the benefits such as something you've got in roading. And
So we need to make that pace thing.
Yes.
Yes, so that's the most important, to make that change. If, but we did this, it would be that. Because what I just otherwise said, it could be construed saying, actually, we need the Teviot to make our pools cheaper.
Well, it could do.
Yeah, and that's not what it is about, but that's what it can be perceived as, and that's not gonna help Northern get his community together anymore, or his board together anymore.
Okay, so just for this, I think, well, what we're hearing is if we don't piecemeal it, that may lead councils in the community towards the status quo. That's a risk we're going to take, because piecemealing it's just going to be an absolute
One or two.
shambles. Comfortable with that?
Yes.
Okay, here we go. Let's,
I just thought to finish it off, we did have a conversation with the TV around their pool in terms of that's a future conversation, a service of level review, potentially LTP. Would you want us to signal that in our comms, or maybe even sort of formally when we go down to the Teviot? We don't want to confuse us with the level of service review, but that essentially, if the decision down the track was that council was to take the Roxwood pool and own it, that kind of helps even up the score with the Teviot. And the reason thus having such a big increase is, of course, the pool down there, which is community funded. I think that's part of the job.
Can we just not ever say if council were to take?
Yeah.
we would be taking on, we'd be taking on. I think moved in that direction in your preparation, but as soon as Sally's back, we need to go down and have a talk to that pool committee. And say, hey, this is something to.
Yeah, that's the key thing, it was privately owned.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no way council can come in and say it's ours, but
We as a community will don't have any say on its future.
yeah,
We can make a recommendation that we would like to buy it from you. If you want to qualify it,
yeah.
we'll take it over.
We really need to have a talk with
They
them.
would need the backing of the community.
Absolutely. But I would think
Move that.
if the pool committee said right at the
That
outset,
story again.
yeah. If the pool committee said right at the outset, forget it, get out of here, then that's the end of that conversation. I wouldn't be taking it to, I don't think we should be taking it to the community. If the pool committee that built the damn thing a few months ago completed that job, said we're not at all interested, then that, I think, would be the end of that conversation.
But it still won't make any difference to how the council votes on districtisation. Maybe,
it's got to
if
be
it's probably owned.
Because if the Cromwell pool did come under the,
Yeah, right.
this is council, then that disparity in the Teviot rates would change. So it may be around this table, people go, you know what, Teviot have taken a hide in this time, I'm not going to impose that, and again, districtisation, forget it. But if it's actually, if that disparity is all that's changing that council's view, and that's not there any longer, then it does change. But the conversation has to start with that full committee, which as soon as Sally's back, we'll bring them in.
Next slide. Okay, so this is Paula, if you know, and she's an apology, she's horribly sick, so she is online there if you ask me any purely questions I can't answer. Paula's discussed this with the GM steering group, and the list there on the PowerPoint there is what we're thinking really are the key messages, whether to put it in the classification document or to have it part of our broader comms and the FAQs. So obviously, rising costs, and that's obviously a big financial driver is so that we're making decisions as one district. Obviously linking in there to the next much around the long-term affordability. Obviously, a key message there around this is part of our journey in continuing the district-wide approach, funding with 18%. Still left there. Services and activities being considered with those listed. Museums, to note here that the museums is because that we have some museums in our buildings and some not there. So that's have a even playing field. We have included all of those. A real key point that we just covered before, we need to get across our community that nothing is going to change around the level of service under council deems otherwise. However, that part of that narrative is that we've just gone out with an 18.3% on average rates increase. So part of the LPP does need to be looking at level of services and talking about what that looks like. but that won't like automatically mean a change to the decision. One thing that you already need to articulate, and we haven't landed on it yet, and I'm hoping, for some of the community board feedback, that narrative will come through, a bit as well. It's been really clear on what this means for community boards, and our chairs have, talked about that, today. And also a move there towards, don't know if it's going to be easier to read rates bills, because it does kind of clump the thing together. It's what sits in the line, so we can explain it rather than all these differentials and all these different rates. It is very complex. If someone goes, well, I charge that particular amount in my rates bill, it is very hard to explain it. So I know I've just thrown all of those at you. Are we missing in terms of starting to build up the narrative about start working on consultation? There is anything that we're missing here that we should be incorporating into our thinking?
Not missing, but I think you'd be very careful about going out and making statements around no immediate changes to level of service, because no one will see the word immediate, but they will see the words no changes to level of service. And one of the rationales for districtisation is exactly that. And museums is probably the most obvious case. So I'd hesitate before I started making any kind of caveats or qualifications in that area, because
That is a valid point you make, because on the current timeline, council has to reach a decision by the 30th of September or thereabouts, so that we can feed this into our financial strategy and start point for the budget for the LTP. Once we start the LTP discussion, let's just say the 1st of October, straight away, we're into levels of service discussion on the various skills. So I guess what we were meaning by that is all that's changing is the funding source is being proposed to change. Is it ward-based? Is it district-wide based? But the same service, so maybe that needs to be teased out or removed.
either removed, but it's implicit.
Yeah.
It's implicit in districtisation that you get, because that's one of the rationales for doing it.
Well, it's implicit in the LTP. We will be reviewing the.
Yes, and maybe take that out totally.
Do you think-
Okay.
I think it'd be good to have something around transparency in there, because that word's come up quite a lot in our recent submissions. And also I think if we can highlight 5 sets of books, that's an easy to understand thing for people, that 5 sets of books doesn't make much sense potentially in terms of, running a business or an organisation. Whether that just ties into that moving towards easier to read rates bills, because they will be easier to read if there's no differentials. That's hard to read and hard to explain, hard to understand.
Yeah.
But if we can talk about transparency that comes with running 1 set of books as opposed to 5.
And another thing I'd like to see emphasised is I think you could make it really clear that if the council is district-ised, then there's got to be locked in stone role for community boards to be having a voice at this table.
Yeah, what does change in community board roles and functions mean? That would be the part, there's no change, we're just talking about the strengthening roles of community boards.
I'd want some kind of cast iron guarantee.
Change what we don't
The
want.
community board can have a voice at this table on a regular basis, which is what
Which we've already undertaken.
but
The only thing is that we can't find future councils, but I think by bringing it in here, if anything, nothing may happen, but by having it here now,
but I think
we're showing the benefit.
yeah, and I think from the communication point, messaging point of view, highlighting that is probably important.
Well, highlighting the changes we've already made, which is both having them here and undertaking that any council decision, which is ward based, will go to the board first, wherever possible, for the board's view. It's urgent. So, yeah, and I think we can't guarantee what future council will do, but proving that works, like this council doing that is a big step towards.
I mean, and so that just becomes part of a normal council meeting that this is a community board voice using it.
Yeah.
And that could infiltrate and filter through the agenda items as well.
Yeah. Well, it will, because if
Reports.
I go back to the dreaded problem, the airport Hamish, that should have gone to the community board first, and now it would. for their view. They don't get to decide, but again, like the money of photo spelling, the voice of the board. I don't see the board as being someone that we consult with or some partnerships. Because there are ears in the community that, like as mayor, I try really hard on a full-time wage to get around the whole district. If I didn't have Stu and the Vincent community, Manitoba, Norm and the TV board, and to a lesser extent, the Cromwell board, I wouldn't know what was going on.
Yeah.
You just can't do that.
So these key messages are going to who? Council, community boards or public?
This is part, so these were our initial brainstorm around the key messages to form up the consultation material.
To who though?
For the community, so for formal consultation in August. So we're going to start very shortly writing that material. So you guys really want your feedback. That's all. This is something that we haven't got it right at the incorporate it. So yes, this will be part of what the public see and
If I'll go back to with the original water and the roading one, there was no consultation with the community, maybe the community boards, and even then it wasn't, we've done it at council level.
I think for this, this is such a significant step that it does, under our significant, and I don't know what our significance and engagement policy was back then, but under our current one, this would trigger significance, which means we have to go out to our community.
But I also asked that first key message, rising costs, in brackets nearing our debt ceiling. I don't see the relevance of putting that in. I would have argued more that we're facing rising costs and districtisation, which of the following efficiency savings to our cost structure, because the debt ceiling is really something quite separate from.
It is and it isn't, because I think what isn't there, and I was going to raise it, is that at the moment, we cannot even contemplate utilising our very few assets to meet those rising costs. We've only got debt and rates. And so we have to put in there cautiously, because if we do districtise, it does mean that the council has available to it land sales, some land sales. It doesn't mean it's going to happen. We still have to go through all the appropriate, but at the moment, we can't even ask the question.
I suppose for me, rising costs would probably be in context of if we districtise these following functions, we're going to make some substantive cost savings in the operation of the organisation.
We probably won't, in as much as we've discussed this, and people think that the efficiency of the finance team doesn't necessarily will lose a member, it's just they'll be able to get a lot of stuff done that they're not
We
getting.
could be more efficient, but in 4 years' time, we'll still have our.
I know you won't be scouting costs. I understand, but just you delay the raising. Right.
But maybe taking your point, it shouldn't be at the top of the messaging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It needs some more sort of rephrasing.
And it's probably more about sort of taking that district-wide view across our activities, isn't it? Part of that needs to go into that message.
Well, in ways, it is the long-term affordability is about how do we manage rising costs. So maybe it's a subset.
Yeah, there's.
With the move towards easier to read rate bills and just what Taylor was saying about transparency, is it your intention to have two rate bills as part of the consultation document?
That was an idea actually me and Tom had. Haven't fully formed that up yet.
I think you absolutely have to, so that people know when they look at it, this is what it looks like as in status quo, this is what it will look like if it's, no. That's people have got to be able to understand it from a personal
perspective, much more clear than the 0.009.
And the only other thing, this might not be really in relation to this. No, I'll say it's not really in relation to this.
And do you need something in the messaging that actually makes it explicit what is happening at the moment? So if you're sitting in Omakau and you're operating on a funded basis, but Omakau or Manitoba would afford a $23 million wastewater plant? Or
Not with 150 residents.
No, but that's already just wide that one anyway.
yeah, I know it's already just, but when you're arguing for where
Discussing.
with it, it's also discussing. Where the costs are going to, the allocation of costs under districtisation
it is worth pointing out that it is highly uneven playing field right now.
And that's why it's continuing districtisation. We're not talking districtisation, we're talking
I'm just
continuing.
talking in terms of key, just method.
Oh, yeah, but it is the language, because we've already districtised 82%. So if we go, hey, we're going to districtise, we need people to know that we've already done the vast bulk of it. We're continuing, we're talking about continuing it. And that's the important of what you're saying, is that the Manitoto would not be able to afford its roads if it wasn't districtised.
Yeah.
Forget it. You know?
That's a good point, Tim. I mean, it's, to me, I'm just sort of asking yourself, what is it we're trying to tell them? Is it, are we trying to tell them what we're doing? Or are we trying to explain what digitisation is and the benefits of it?
What the benefits are.
Well, certainly not what
Well,
they do.
there's a list of activities here that we're actually undertaking as part of digitisation. Are we trying to get the ratepayer to understand what digitisation is, or here's what we're doing? So I mean,
I agree. I think that list actually, it asks for questions rather than describe.
Yeah.
Gives information. So I mean, changing community board roles and function, you're immediately going to go, well, what does that mean?
Needs to say, this is at this stage what we envisage.
Yeah,
Community
it's the
should do.
same with
But it's
technical,
also right,
but I mean, the sharing the load, the strategic decision making, that all makes sense. But, yeah, I agree with you.
yeah, so you could ask yourself, what is it we want to hear back?
Well,
Well, we know what we want to hear, but.
Yeah. Like that continuous district-wide approach, we'd have to extrapolate that, you know, we have said free water, driving libraries, private toilets. And when we go to the next bit, pools, we'd have to say, well, what does that mean? That means it would be a district-wide rate that would pay for this as opposed to the current ward-based type system. So it's just, I guess it's putting what are the options out there for the
What's the, I mean, an example is easy to see. So you could say currently 4 pools, Vincent pays this, Cromwell pays this, Manitoto pays this, TV pays X. If it was a district-wide rate, everybody would pay Z.
And all I'm saying is that we're somewhere in that investor, you need to be able to say,
Yeah.
already with digitised coding in the
Yes.
3 waters.
Very much so.
And here's a practical example of what that
That's
means.
right.
Terry,
What that-
Manitoto, Cromwell.
very much so. And we've seen those slides, that one where you see the blue line for the Manitoto roads is compelling.
But that means they continue on a distritisation approach to funding service and activities. 3 waters, that's done, roading's done, public toilets done.
So
So
that's saying what.
But that's
it's a continuation of that.
There's one missing from there, waste.
Waste.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably one of, it's reasonably chunky.
Big one, yeah.
The bit that, and I was away, so I may have missed this, but what's going to make the rates bill easier to read? There's still going to be a line that says community, facilities where it's called, it's still going to be a line that says the same thing, as we're going to do something.
Okay, I've got, that's been my idea, boss, but I just didn't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, you got me.
Now for time, Tracy.
Can we just gather some form, our shapes.
Well, on the slide, you would have seen, we had pools and parks and we had those broken down into different aspects. We might be able to, because it comes under recreation and culture, picks up
Yeah,
parks, pools.
Yeah.
But what would they see off the top of my head is if we just had it at that level, recreation and culture, you would see a standard rate across the district for everyone. You would, it's like 1151 for roads.
Yeah.
6789 for.
so what I say is that doesn't make it easier to read.
No,
It's the
easier to
same number,
understand.
just the same number, a standard number.
Yeah. but
Yeah,
it's,
whereas I would think it would be almost, you want to make it easy to read. Pools, cemeteries,
you could.
but that's actually harder in some ways because you're going to make that rates breakdown bigger. But
But I
that's,
think you then create that discrepancy where, you know, recreation and culture, everybody probably uses some form of recreation and some form of culture, but as soon as you start saying pools, cemetery, library, people go, well, I don't use the pool, and I don't use the library, and don't use the cemetery this month, hopefully.
but my real point was saying, you can't say that it's an easy to read rate.
Well, I think as soon as you take away,
That's the wrong language.
but as soon as you take away the bit that says the differential.
Just before we move off this slide, the only point I'd pick up was Anna's one is we might need a bit of language around the endowment land and the freehold land.
Yeah.
The legal advice that has been shared with all elected members is very clear. Whether it's for municipal purposes, whether it's for the borough or Cromwell or whatever, it's quite clear that it has to be spent within. So there's no argument with that. That's standard. So there is no asset grab, there is no land grab.
But that's
whatever. That's right.
important communication.
Said right. Freehold is different. Gear Avenue is different because Gear Avenue is not endowment land. So that is a decision of council how that the proceeds of that could be utilised. And that's extent, you know, and it comes from that's been delegated to the community board to make that decision with the current delegations. But endowment land does have some legal stand, and we have endowment land right throughout the district. And so everyone's sort of equal in that might not be worth the same bit of money, but so maybe we need something to try and explain that.
And just make sure that the Gear Ave wasn't bought with endowment money. Commonwealth Board has bought land with endowment money.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm not saying that it's,
I don't think we're going to be able to
yeah.
which bit came from endowment, which bit came from.
Yeah, I thought we've
gone around and purchased them.
made sure that was well covered off and we did it back then, but unfortunately the person that will probably remember it much better than me, it's not here, it's not here.
Also, sorry to interrupt, but you've been disposing of Gear Ave land
Yeah,
through many stages already,
True.
and I would have thought that
yeah.
that would have come out then, because you would have had to consult if it was.
And more of these tricks, more of these tricks you got to see.
It's not a trick, it's just one of those things having, whoops, have we made a rock for our own back, are we in the shit?
You need to,
Well, that's what
you need to explain to them endowment land, but in practice over the next 2 years, that might make a damn bit of difference.
Well, what it does make a difference is on our affordability. Even to say you sold all the land and got 300 million and it stays within the Cromwell Borough, that's fine. It makes a difference on our debt profile because it is still on our books.
Yeah.
It is still income. It without the sale of endowment land that's forecast to occur, we will hit our debt ceiling in 2 years' time instead of 5 years' time. I mean, that's the reality of what endowment land does to us. It brings our debt ceiling that little bit further down the road, but we will hit it nonetheless at this current point in time.
Hang on, and then I'm just conscious Peter and I have to go in about 20 minutes, so.
Cromwell Community Board, when we go out with that message around endowment land, because it was so contentious last time, if we're explaining that endowment land could say be sold in Cromwell and used to build, say, a water treatment plant in the CBD of Cromwell.
We love those in our.
Because you love those in water, not wastewater. What do you think the community will feel about that, recognising that the benefit of the land would remain in Cromwell, because only Cromwell people will be drinking out of those taps, but by a trickle-on effect, other areas will also benefit.
I think that's the important language there is for the benefit of the borough.
Yeah.
So that land would be spent on projects within the Cromwell borough.
Yeah, so it's more the idea that money would then build a bridge in Maniatoto, which understandably they didn't like. But if it was spent in Cromwell, but other ratepayers would get trickle-on effects because it's already districtised, that so long as it was spent in Cromwell on something for Cromwell.
I believe that is the crux of the words, the emotive words used by some of the members of our community about things like asset grab are around that you're going to take assets and land values from Cromwell and use them for the benefit of,
outside,
specifically to be for a project somewhere else. And I understand that obviously where it is freehold land, that is still up for grabs, that you've got land, it's been developed there, that money is available for the district. But I think it would go some ways into helping people to understand that actually there's going to be, there's a whole lot we gain by things being districtised. There's a whole lot we gain in terms of costs being spread across the whole district. And yes, we have some concerns around what happens with land sales, but this portion of land sales has to be used for projects within our district anyway.
So the question would be that the way it would go, and it did go down this path, was we've got to build the Cromwell Drinking Water Plant. If we apply $3 million of industrial land in Cromwell that is endowment land to that plant, then everyone in Cromwell will get $20 less on their rates bill. So will everybody in the rest of the district. what do you think about that from people? Or what does everybody think about that? Is that kosher or not? And because it's still $20 less for those people in Bromley. You know?
Again, other districts will be doing, or other places will be doing exactly the same.
Potentially.
Yeah.
So if you're looking at, especially with water, you know, 3 waters, and it is so expensive, just imagine which district you live in, you're still gonna get your $20 from who
Yeah.
or whatever. It'll balance itself out.
Over time.
So is there an argument to ring father or against the Cromwell Hall and more?
Again, you can't tie up, if you want.
Maybe not part of it.
You can ring fence it to the next LTP if you want. Because that's what the LTP will do is, the hall is already ring fenced unless you're talking the ongoing operational cost.
Correct.
But it's already, well, it would be ring fenced for the district to pay. And again, for me, it's very much a fairness thing. That's the Central Otago Event Centre, why should Cromwell be paying? But I also hear the voice on the Manitoba of the Tiwi going, I don't have a bloody thing to do with it.
The argument of the Minnesota would be if you went to delegation, they had no say in the size and scale of it. And if it was built twice the size it was, because the wish list of McKinley and all those bloody
Yeah,
old
but
fogies
then,
and
but then they'll-
decide we want to have wheelchair access to the
but
second
then-
story.
then they'll say-
But there's no say in doing that.
And how much gets spent on the roads in the Manitoba.
The argument, we haven't got a bridge to the other oak to me, to County Council way back in the time, we'll do our job better than going to Alexandria and inefficiency. So we're going a step again and we've got another step. They always said, we had 3 graders, we gave away a grader and 3 gravel trucks to Alexandria, we got 4 roads in it 30 years ago. So I mean, you're gonna go back and forwards like that no matter where you are.
And it's that, I think the one does.
So thank you for asking.
The Cromwell loads can be great, so you don't bring.
Can we just see where you want to take us?
Plant in the mall would be great.
Go up and drinking
We
water.
got a fountain. Here's the. Bottle out of the fountain.
Right, we just need to bring ourselves back.
So, the next one is districtisation is a made-up word. It's something that we all know, and historically we've used it here at COGC through our previous districtisation. We really want to play in English this, as part of the, comms. And I know we're just throwing these ideas at you. We've got a few ideas there, working together, share the load, working together as one district. With the board together, one district, Central Otago joining up as one district. Just on an initial note, is there anything
I love one district, Central Otago, because that tells it.
That's it.
Surely we are.
Yeah. A world of difference.
Central Otago is number 1.
Rules for the Z.
As long as Cromwell say so.
one district, Central Otago? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect, that's nice and easy. And then the final slide we have is, because we know this does impact, differently across our community and sort of, different parts of our community, they take those, comments about Cromwell. May wish to hear further information about endowment land. I know Tibet will have, particular questions. So what Paula and her team have, quite a list here of what we're thinking in terms of, our engagement approaches to be during the month of August. The targeted one, I know, the Mayor and Peter have already started some conversations with community groups. So that's a target interest group meetings, gatherings, and obviously those already booked for our business breakfasts and whatnot. Short presentation. So what we were wondering, and we really would like your feedback here is, we had some quite strong feedback, particularly from the TV around the drop-ins and whether or not, as part of districtisation, is that we do something a wee bit different, like an actual presentation from councillors and community board members in each ward, and then an opportunity for questions, as opposed to a drop-in. Open that to the floor as to what you think would be in terms of having this conversation.
It's a really interesting one. After that meeting on Saturday, I've become a big fan of the drop-ins because you get to have the one-on-one corridos that have deeper meaning for those people who are there. But the meeting on Saturday, whilst the vast majority of the speakers, I could have told you beforehand who would speak and what it was they would say, I came away with the sense that there were 100 people, not 180 as described, maybe 120 tops, that felt they'd been heard. And Martin said the same thing, and he asked me to reflect it to the councillors today that maybe we do need to revisit using public meetings at times, because And I don't think the drop-in approach actually worked that well with the rates because there were so many complexities that A, the people didn't turn up, but B, also you could get tied up for the whole meeting or for 3/4 of an hour with one person. There are others waiting. So I'd be open to us utilising this as maybe going back to a town hall meeting approach. And then I think that town hall meeting approach in line with the partnership would be, it'll be run by the boards and the council. And it would perhaps be the mayor and the chair up on the stage,
Yeah.
in front of it.
You go to the Minnetonka Hospital one, the town hall
Yeah.
filled up
Yeah,
and they got into Bernard and they got into everyone about not putting money in. Well, those-
still the youngest person there. I'm not-
Oh, well, that's,
It was
and probably,
remarkable.
and probably still looking in this room too, but that's beside.
No, that goes not past, but it still was not representative, but it was full.
Yeah, and those people had their person, but like Jerry Eckhoff come here, they push someone forward to have their say. Well, they'll go, oh, look, can you speak, to me on behalf of the brass band, or, they'll have someone to do their work.
If you have a town hall meeting, that must, they'll have to come to the communication.
Absolutely, they would be the town hall meetings would be the end of the process, not the beginning. Yeah.
Yes.
And I would also think that to have, if this winds up being 8 PowerPoint slides that we'd be showing at the town meeting, they need to be in our service centres, libraries or whatever beforehand, so the people at their leisure can go through them. And at the end, here's the phone numbers of your whoever's, all of us, the relevant community boards. If you give us a ring, talk it through.
Is it a town hall meeting or is it some other small meeting that's held in a hall?
Yeah.
It's really important about saying what the expectation of a town hall meeting is. So whatever you're going to call it, make sure the expectation of the outcomes are going to be quite clear.
Yeah.
So it's not.
Presentation.
Yeah.
Community presentation, I love it.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah.
She's got something to say today.
Yes, I just know there's people there want to have a town hall meeting because they want to turn it into a bit sheet.
Yeah.
It's not-
got chalks in
Yes,
there.
yeah.
And
Yes.
we're about in an LTP campaign, but in the message, and we're asking for the public's opinion, but we're not bound by it.
Oh, yeah, that's, yeah.
And because, if you ask my personal view, districtisation is a done deal.
Well, it can't be.
Well, I'd agree with you on that.
I'm not, I'll rephrase that.
Determine yourself.
Yeah, I know, I'll rephrase it. Districtisation is almost a necessity for this organisation to run efficiently.
And at the moment, you're seeing more positives than negatives. But
What did you say?
Oh, yeah.
5 weeks ago?
Subject to the view of others, sorry, I haven't got to put that in. But somewhere that messaging has to be through, otherwise people feel they've been sandbagged. Depending on what.
we need to go out with the pros and cons, but we also need to show that we've seen the cons, and the cons are what happens to the boards. Well, we've built the boards, we've thought this through, this is where we think it can land, and the boards we may well wind up with the mayor on the stage and the board chair, and they're arguing.
Throwing things at him.
Yeah, we may well, we don't know.
But it's more than, it's more than
Ideas, man.
Yeah.
fact. At the end of the day, this council makes the decision.
My guts of it will be that every person that I've talked to about districtisation, once you have the conversation, go, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But it's that message that we've got to give, that, we've got to make it available to people to get and understand.
And it's also another reason why you came to town hall meeting is because it means you won't do this for a couple of years in common.
No, yeah, that we just.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Too bad put on it.
Just the second last bullet point there, where it demonstrate how community input will influence decision making, which is, I'm assuming, about boards. That really needs to come on the previous bit that's about changes to. We've got in your other slide, that bullet that said there were changes to the functions and how the community boards run. They need to go together, and I think you need to put in some stuff about the fact that that doesn't mean that there won't be input and influence over decision making from the boards.
Yeah. I guess I'm just really conscious, we'd be doing this and then we're gonna do LTP. How many people do you reckon we have to go through this approach, then this, and the LTP flopping out?
I mean,
Great,
LTP
they're gonna be like,
That's
Really?
right. But
Council
the
bringing
LTP
us again?
consultation won't be until March next year,
yeah,
and so there will be a.
but that's quite soon in people's mind.
Well, what do you do?
I know,
Yeah.
but it's just,
You can get consultation too, but this is a big discussion for the community. If they don't want to be involved, then
They
fine.
won't, but if you want to get people at the thing, just do what you did originally and say that we're going to sell them down land in Cromwell, you might put a bridge up in Coburn. Everyone would have filled the hall if you had a hall. But you have, so they'll be out in the street in the car park.
School.
School, there you go. You've got to go to the rugby club.
You can do it in the afternoon.
We don't have it.
Everyone's back now.
What'll happen, just go through the motions. No
All right.
one's coming on board.
Anything more, team? I'm just conscious that
You need to go.
we need to go.
I'm more than happy to take, any brainwaves outside of this meeting and, would be on it.
It's
We
true.
are. It's done, to meet our deadlines, obviously review through Peter and we with the comms team, really within the next week, we'll get all this material sorted. So if you do have a brainwave, sooner rather than later, would be appreciated.
Talk to you later then.
Thanks very much, and thanks to those, thanks Anna and Jaden, Norm. Well, I'm just going to say those who had to travel long distances, and then I'll look at Jaden and there as you walk in. All right, thanks everyone, thanks, Saskia.
Thank you.
Councillors, there's still a roading
Well, chat.